Don't Book Fight card. So difficult to choose which fight to review. Great card. One of the upsets of the night, David Morrell suffered a shock knockout defeat against Jacqui-Lee. And also worth a mention, Jack Rafferty produced the standout win of his career, stopping Echo Esserman after 6 rounds. And also, I love this kid. Uzbekistan's Javahir Umataliev continues to look a serious talent. Very intelligent boxer, slick, entertaining, elusive when he needs to be. He's a really gifted fighter that the boxing purist and the casual fan would love. And as some of the big names are exiting from the sport, are we starting to see the next generation of elite amateur pedigree transitioning into the pro scene? And when you're looking at fighters like Usyk, Bivol, Lomachenko, Baturviev, and okay, this might sound like a bold prediction, but Umataliev has the same attributes as some of those generational greats. Yeah, you got to get behind this kid. And the main event, Daniel Dubois stops Fabio Wardley to take the WBO heavyweight strap. It was absolute carnage. And honestly, most people reviewing this fight are going to talk about the stoppage. But they might miss the actual story, because the most important moment in that fight wasn't the 11th round. Hi, my name is Jacqui-Lee Pryce, former boxer, and I spent many years in the sport as a boxing coach and judge. Absolute carnage. Let's look at a few key rounds and turning points. The real story of this fight might be what happened in the first 3 rounds, because after being dropped twice by Fabio Wardley, the question became, could Daniel Dubois recover physically, mentally, tactically to still execute the game plan? Before a punch is thrown, you're already gathering information. And if you go back to the face-off before round 1, Wardley actually looks the more confident of the two. Now, that's not a criticism of Dubois. He still looks in the zone. The question going into this fight wasn't about Dubois' power. Everyone knows he's got power. People question which Dubois would turn up. If he's put under pressure, if he's clipped, how does he respond? Wardley has dismantled traditional technical boxers. That unorthodox style is exactly why. Because the textbook doesn't prepare you for that, and it shouldn't work. But it does. I think it was Carl Frampton that said, you know, he's made a mockery of the sport. Yeah, I think he meant it as a compliment, but he gets caught a lot, and he sometimes overbalances on the front foot to get shots off. Rarely in that traditional get-set position to counter, and yet he can still get his shots off. He's dangerous because he fights on instinct, and instinct is hard to read, hard to time, hard to prepare for. Round 1, literally in the first 10 seconds, Wardley drops Dubois, sets up with a backhand first, feints, draws Dubois on. He chucks that overhand right, and to be fair, looking at it again, it looks like it glances around the back of Dubois' head. Depends on your interpretation. Some of those shots, they landed around the rear or side rear of Dubois' head. Whether that's intentional, a result of Wardley's unorthodox entries, or simply the nature of those chaotic exchanges is up for debate. But what isn't debatable is this: those knockdowns immediately change the state of the fight, neurologically, emotionally, tactically. And to give Wardley his full credit, his aggression, his awkward entries, his willingness to go immediately, he forced Dubois into discomfort from the first bell. Most fighters never recover from that sort of start, and this is important. If a shot lands behind the ear or partially on the rear of the head, it can absolutely affect balance, legs, spatial awareness, recovery speed and composure. Dubois got up a little too soon in my opinion. The Dubois that got stopped by Usyk, that fight was over before it started mentally. This fight, Dubois uses the count, he looks over to his corner and there's zero fear there. That showed Wardley and everyone watching that this was a different Dubois, and it was. Round 3, Dubois up on his toes, building momentum. He's not being triggered by feints as much, and he's really giving Wardley something to think about. And then Wardley drops him again. Again, a shot that lands around the back and side of the head. And as Wardley goes in for that second attack, Dubois takes a knee, but it looks more intentional. I'm not sure if Dubois' senses were scrambled for a second, but again, he gets up, composes himself, and then gets back on that jab. And at this point, the whole question becomes, you know, can he actually recover from this? to still execute the game plan. Dubois' ability to recover neurologically and emotionally from those initial knockdowns may have been the single most important factor in this fight, because what you see is rapid recovery, emotional composure, tactical discipline, immediate re-establishment of the jab, sustained pressure afterwards. This is not a quitter. This is a guy who resets extremely well under pressure. Wardley rarely takes his head off the centre line, and you see Dubois start to execute that 1-2 down the pipe. One thing Dan is very good at is measuring distance. He takes that little step back as Wardley's on the offence. Now, every time Wardley tries to execute that 1-2, he either throws with him to take the momentum out the shot, or, he creates a little bit of distance, making Wardley miss wildly. Some nice work from Dubois. He's reading that 1-2 coming off Wardley. He's able to take his head off the centre line, slip inside the jab, or, slip on the outside of Wardley's right hand, and then solid backhand counter. That's rolling on the outside of Wardley's right hand. He just shifts his feet and chucks a backhand of his own. That's the first steps of taking away Wardley's attributes. Round 5, probably the most underrated round of the fight, because this is where Dubois regained authority. Less chaos, less emotional reaction, controlled pressure, and no unnecessary reckless moves. And Wardley's reactions have started changing. Dubois is doubling, tripling those jabs, detonating a right hand of his own. Wardley's having less success with that right hand. Dubois has definitely taken away one of his strongest weapons. And this is where we start to see the difference between having, a good, solid foundation in the toolkit. The way Dubois is getting himself in and out of range is alternating between, one moment being disciplined behind the jab, controlling distance, textbook. Next minute, he's physically imposing himself, roughing Wardley up in the clinch. Wardley couldn't find a consistent rhythm. He's falling short, but he's still very much a dangerous fighter. Game plan and discipline are key, to be fair, and that's what made Dubois so effective. Don Charles has really done his homework, and I'm intrigued to find out who they got in for sparring to mimic Wardley's style. Round 6 to 8, the fight completely changes shape. Wardley's still having pockets of success, but his output is dropped. His feet slowed, his defensive actions became laboured, and Dubois realised that Wardley can be walked down. The entire narrative has flipped, and this is where you start to see the systematic breakdown of Fabio Wardley. And here's a detail most people missed. I want to talk about that jab to the throat. You see it several times throughout the fight. Dubois jabs Wardley in the throat, stops him in his tracks, breaks his rhythm, interrupts his tempo. It's draining. Now, I'm not saying it was intentional, but if it was, the ref probably let it slide because there was a bit of tit for tat regarding borderline shots. Wardley is still dangerous. He's trying to chuck bombs, but he's getting caught a little bit more easily now. I think at this point, Wardley's just fighting on instinct. The game plan's gone out of the window. He's just willing to take one to give one. Rounds 9 to 10 is where the fight probably should have been stopped. Wardley's eyes were closing, his balance is going, his defence is completely off. He's just getting reckless. Referee Howard Foster gets a lot of criticism, but after the Wardley Dubois fight, there's definitely something off with this guy. And I'm going to be honest, I say this as someone who's worked many corners. Sometimes it's clear cut. Pull your guy out, and other times you can second guess yourself. Listen, I can see the argument for letting it go on, especially if you're a late finisher or if you're the upset man like Fabio Wardley is. But he has time and again come back from the brink. But that's the corner's job. That's what you have another set of eyes for. The welfare of the boxer is paramount, and especially if you're dealing with someone with a freakish chin like Wardley. Doctors also to blame. He had a look at him a couple of times and passed him to fight on. It really felt like everything was conspiring for the Wardley win. And Wardley is, credit to him, freakishly tough. It's quite frightening how much punishment he can absorb. But I'm starting to see a pattern where a ref will let certain fighters take undue punishment. The fight is finally waved off in round 11. Okay, let's talk about Don Charles. Dubois left after the Usyk loss. Don Charles took a lot of stick, and honestly, most trainers wouldn't have had Dan back, but he did, and was criticised, but he probably knew that that relationship wasn't done. Don, Daniel and Dave, or Stan as I know him, made the right call. And whatever mental preparation they're doing with Daniel, it's working. They've obviously listened to the criticism about him being allegedly mentally weak and vulnerable, and it looks like they've actually taken it on board and done some work around it. I think this trainer-fighter relationship, it'll go down as one of the most effective this sport has seen this era. I bumped into Daniel recently, we had a good chat, and it was apparent that he's really happy. Happy fighter, dangerous fighter. I was really impressed by Dubois' composure. He was really listening to Don Charles, and he took a couple of thumps in his face, but it worked. Yeah, hats off to Fabio Wardley. Huge respect for him, especially after Saturday night. He's a great guy, a true warrior, and he hasn't let fame affect him. His stock has definitely risen, but he took a lot of damage in that fight, so I guess kind of just have to wait and see what he decides to do with his career. But Dubois' adaptation, recovery, pressure, patience were the decisive parts of the victory. Who do you guys want to see Dubois fight next? Apparently Moses Zatauma is mandatory, or do you want to see Fabio Wardley Dubois too? If you want an authentic voice in boxing, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, drop a comment below, be part of the conversation, and thanks for watching.